So far we have seen different components of LangChain, that is prompt engineering, chains, memory, agents, and tools. And we have also seen RAG, right? So how to build RAG applications as well. And now let's see how we can empower an LLM by providing access to different tools. Now let's go to VS Code and try to build an application around these tools, right? So this is our tools and agents demo folder. So inside this file, new file, Python file, and let's save this as math tools agents use case, right? So we will be using math tool, which is inside LangChain chains. So the first thing is we have to make sure we install LangChain OpenAI, right? So in order to use the OpenAI LLM, so we will be using OpenAI as our LLM. And once you install LangChain OpenAI package, the next thing is we have to import all the required modules. And in case if you do not want to use this paid LLM OpenAI, you can also choose any other open source models too, right? For example, you can replace this OpenAI with Olama or any other open source models from Hugging Face, right? So you don't have to just rely on this OpenAI. Okay. So here we are trying to import LLM math chain from LangChain chains and tool from LangChain agents and OpenAI from LangChain LLMs and load.env from .env and OS module, right? So the first thing is we have to load the environment variables from .env file. So this is where we stored all our environment variables. Inside this environment file, we stored our OpenAI API key. So now first thing is we used this load_.env function from .env, and by using this we are trying to load the environment variables, right? And then the next thing is let's try to read the API keys. So we are trying to read OpenAI API key and storing that inside OpenAI API key variable. Okay, and now let's try to store this OpenAI API key inside this environment variable, right? And let me close this. And the next thing is let's try to initialize OpenAI LLM, right? By using OpenAI, which is from LangChain LLMs, right? Now here we are using LLM math chain, right? So let's try to initialize LLM math chain as well. This is from LangChain chains. So that is our next step. So far we have initialized our LLM, which is nothing but OpenAI, and then we also have LLM math chain to bind this LLM with the tool, right? So that is why we initialized our LLM math chain. And the next one is let's use this tool class, which is from LangChain agents, and initialize our math tool. Okay, initialize this tool class, which is from LangChain agents. Here we are trying to set the parameters, name as calculator, and function is inside this LLM math chain we have a function called run. So that is what we are telling this tool to use. And what is the description? Useful for when you need to answer questions about math, right? So this is the math tool. So that is how you can create a tool. Okay, so far we have initialized our LLM, and we also have our math chain, which is LLM math chain, and inside that we have a function called run. So that is the function we are telling it to use, and we also initialized our tool. Okay, now when giving this tool to LLM, we must pass this tool as a list. Okay, so here we are trying to give this math tool to our LLM OpenAI. Okay, and we must pass this as a list. So remember that. And now inside this LangChain agents, we also have another module called load_tools. So let's try to load that module as well, load_tool. So this is another function which is inside LangChain agents. Let's use that load_tools function, which is from LangChain agents. So load tools based on their name. Tools allow agents to interact with various resources and services like APIs, databases, file systems, etc. So that is the intent of using tools, right? And here we are giving the tool name as a list, and we are assigning the LLM, right? So far we have initialized our LLM and then LLM math chain, and we created our math tool as well. Now let's initialize the agent, which is again from LangChain agents. So we have a function called initialize agent. So by using that, let's try to initialize an agent. So our agent is zero shot React description, and for the tools we are passing whatever tools we have created, that is our math tool, and this is the OpenAI LLM, and verbose is equal to true and max iterations is equal to 3. So once we have the agent ready, for this agent we assign tools, we also assign LLM, and now let's try to ask a math question and see if this agent is able to perform or not. Okay, so for this zero shot agent, let's try to ask a math question. What is 4.5 times 2.1 to the power of 2.2? So this is our question, and also let's try to print this so we can see in the terminal. Let me try to execute this. So you can see this is the output our agent has given us. Okay, so now let's see if it is actually correct or not, right? So let's try to cross verify this. So let's try to just print this value. So let me create this session and rerun the code. So now you can say both are giving the same result, right? So that means our agent is trying to calculate the correct value for the math question that we have asked, right? Let's try to ask another math question. Zero shot agent, if Mary has 4 apples and Tom brings 2.5 apple boxes and each apple box contains 8 apples, how many apples do we have? So this is a math question that we are asking to our agent. So now let's clear this, and also I'm commenting this print statement, and now let's rerun the code. So let's try to understand the output first. So for the previous question, we asked what is the value of this math question. So entering new agent execution chain, I should calculate the expression using a calculator, and the action is calculator. Action input is, this is the input, and the observation answer is this. And what is the thought? I now know the final answer, and it gave the final answer, right? So this is how the agent performed the task. And then we also asked another question. Entering new agent executor chain, we need to calculate the total number of apples. So it understood it need to calculate the total number of apples for this question, right? So what is the input? First, Mary has 4 apples and Tom brought 2.5 apple boxes, and each box contained 8 apples, right? So 2.5 times 8, and the total answer is 24. And the thought is we have 24 apples in total. So the final answer is 24 apples, right? So that is how it is able to calculate the math questions, right? And now let's try to ask another question. What is the capital of the United States of America, right? So this question is not a math question. So now let me kill this and then rerun the code and see if it is able to answer this generic question, right? So you can see raised error, variable node, object is not callable. Please try again with a valid numerical expression. Is this a numerical expression? No. Unfortunately, we end up hitting an error. This is because the agent is enforcing the use of a tool, because we are trying to use the math tool. So what is the workaround? We have created math tool. So we have to add another tool that can answer this generic question, right? So far, whenever we asked any math question, it is able to understand and give us the answer. But when we ask this generic question, it is not able to answer. So we have to create another tool so that the agent will be able to answer this general knowledge question, right? So we just need to link it to an LLM tool, right? So let me comment this, and now let's close this as well. And let's see how we can add another tool. So the first thing is, let me try to import prompt template from LangChain prompts, and then LLM chain from LangChain chains. Before we used LLM math chain, and now let's use LLM chain instead of LLM math chain. Now we are using LLM chain because it is able to answer only questions that is related to math, right? So that is why we are using LLM chain now. So we can create a generic tool, and now let's try to initialize the prompt template. So this prompt template is from LangChain prompts, and we are passing input variables query, and the template is equal to query. And instead of LLM math chain, let's try to initialize LLM chain, right? So this again we imported from LangChain chains, right? So when we created this math tool, here we used LLM math chain. Instead of this LLM math chain, let's try to use LLM chain, and let's create an LLM tool. So notice here, this is the LLM chain dot run, and here we used LLM math chain dot run, right? So that is the difference. You can see the description here. Use this tool for general purpose queries and logic. If it is math related questions, then use this math tool. If it is general purpose questions, then use this tool, right? So now let's try to append this LLM tool to math tool, okay? So we have stored this inside tools, right? So let's try to append tools dot append, and we are appending this LLM tool as well. So now we have both math tool and also LLM tool. So once we have the tool ready, now let's try to initialize the agent. So this is our agent, zero shot React description, and for the tools we assign the tools. This tools contains both math and general LLM tool as well, and for the LLM we set this LLM, and verbose is equal to true, max iterations is equal to 3, right? So with this we should be able to ask either math question or any other generic question as well, right? Because we have provided both math tool as well as this LLM tool, because we are using LLM chain here, right? So let's try to ask this generic question now. Okay, so save it, and also let's try to ask another math question as well. So here we are asking both generic question and also math question. So let me save this code and rerun the code. So this is the first one, and then the apples question, and then if you notice here, this is the generic question we asked after adding the LLM chain, right? So what is the capital of the United States of America? In the observation, the capital of the United States of America is Washington DC, right? So it is able to answer now, and we have also asked math question as well. So it is able to answer both generic question as well as math question, right? So that is how you should be able to provide different tool access to LLM, right? So let's quickly review what we learned here. So the first thing is we try to install all the required packages. So we have already installed this package when implementing the previous applications, right? So in case if you haven't installed already, make sure you copy this pip install LangChain OpenAI and go to the terminal and give this command and hit enter. So that way this package will be installed. And once you install the package, the next step is we are trying to load all the required modules from LangChain. And also we are importing load_.env function from .env module. And by using load_.env function, we are trying to load the environment variables from .env file. So inside this, we stored our OpenAI API key, and we are trying to read that key. and we are storing inside this OpenAI API key environment variable. And the next step is we initialized our OpenAI LLM, and here we are trying to initialize LLM math chain. So this is specific to math related, right? And once we have the LLM and the LLM math chain ready, next thing is we are trying to create a tool. Here we initialized this tool class, which is from LangChain Agents, and the name is calculator. Function is inside this LLM math chain we have a method called run. So that is the function we are assigning to this, and the description is useful for when you need to answer questions about math, right? So this is how we created the math tool. And remember, whenever we are trying to give tools to LLM, we must pass this as a list, right? And then we use this load underscore tools function from LangChain Agents, and we are giving the description, and we assigned our LLM which we initialized before, right? And once we have the LLM and tools ready, the next thing is we initialize the agent, and we passed the tools LLM to our agent. And the next thing is we asked a math question, and the agent was able to get the answer for us. And then we cross verified, and it was able to give us the correct answer. And then we asked another math question, it was able to give us the answer. And then we asked a generic question, and it was not able to answer because it is not related to math. So that's why we created a LLM tool. Instead of just math tool, we created another generic purpose tool, and we appended both, right? Here notice we are using LLM chain instead of LLM math chain, and we are calling the run function and assigning this to this parameter, right? And here again we initialized the agent, and here notice we are assigning tools. This tools contains both math tool as well as this LLM tool, right? So that is why it is able to answer both the questions, either it is general purpose question or math question. So that is how you can provide different tool access to an LLM so that it can perform different tasks for us. All right. Thank you.